midnight, if any of you are on that fan side, from midnight, they were doing a countdown.
Yes.
It was about 1:30 that it came out.
I know, and I had such a head. I mean, I drank last night, toasting all of you out there, counting down, because it was just so. And I think the strangest thing, I didn't expect this, and it sounds mad because people are saying they did expect it, but I didn't expect it. I expected people to say, oh, well, good, finally it's here, and that would be sort of the end of it. I didn't expect this kind of like, people keep writing to me, now my childhood is ended. I feel I've killed childhood. Kind of daunting. Some guy wrote the other day, just really beautifully, a guy with a suit, a grown man with a suit wrote, and that was last week, he wrote, next week, no matter what happens, Isobelle Carmody will break my heart. And I just, So, I didn't expect this, and yet for me it's been this journey. Of course it's been this journey that started when I was 14, as a kid, and I'm not sure I can do this without howling. No, I mean, for me, I wasn't writing. Somebody a few minutes ago asked for some advice for a writer, and the advice that jumped straight to mind was that you have to write for yourself, and it is, in the end, for me, a very selfish pursuit, which is what makes this so astounding. In the end, I didn't think about being published when I was a 14-year-old kid. I mean, there wasn't the internet. We have to sort of get the picture of how long ago that was. There was no internet. There were no computers at all. The only computer that existed was 3 stories high and owned by a government. A weaponized computer, thank you. And it was not long after my dad had died. And for me, there's all sorts of reasons why I wrote about Obernewtyn to begin with, and some of them are technical, but one of them is that I guess there can be no greater apocalypse in the life of a child than the death of a parent. And so I've no doubt I was to some extent channeling that terrible loss and the aftermath of that loss, which is a world full of radioactive black wastelands that never go away. Because if somebody you love dies, it never stops. You come back to it again and again in your life, and you form around it in some ways. So, although I couldn't have thought that or said that, certainly not allowed to anyone at 14, that was probably in the back of my mind. I wrote the book not to be published because I lived in a housing commission area. I couldn't in a million years imagine that I'd be published. I just wrote for myself, and I wrote for solace and for comfort, and none of you are allowed to cry. Because the minute I see you dabbing in your eyes, it sets me off. Oh, this is going to be an unbelievable. This is my first time of talking on this tour, and I see how it's going to be. Just not wearing makeup. Now, I wrote for solace, like many of us read, and I read for the same reason. It's hard to talk about childhood calmly when you're writing. I didn't expect this either. I didn't expect I'd feel like this. A lot of people said in the year leading up to this, when they were trying to hurry me up and hoping that I'd get to it before the publication date, which was announced way too early and nerve-wrackingly for me. And as the countdown was happening, I just wasn't sure that I'd manage it to get to the end in time. And people kept saying to me, oh, how are you feeling? Like I was recovering from a terrible disease. And that's what I felt like. It was this consoling and slightly alarmed way of asking me, was I okay? And I thought, they all thought that I was going to have this big emotional feeling at the end of it. And I just thought, no, I'm not. I'm not that kind of person. I'm really calm. I'm very rational. And I feel now looking back, maybe it's only in this moment that I can recognise it, but I see myself as this very non-emotional and rational person, and I think Elspeth is like that too. I think she thinks of herself as an unemotional person, but she's not. She doesn't let it get out, and so I guess I didn't see that correlation between me and her. And she was this really strong character into which I could go and be, and she would deal with a world in which things were the way. Or people cared about the things that I cared about. You know, I looked out at the world when I was a 14-year-old kid, and I didn't like it much. You know, I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like what the adult world did. I knew it was a world into which I was going to go and be an adult somehow. I couldn't imagine that, but it was obviously going to happen. And I didn't know how I could live in that world. I didn't even live very well in the world that I was in as a teenager. And what was the adult world going to be like? It didn't look that good to me. And I guess I wrote the Obernewtyn Chronicles because I was trying to find out if I could believe things could evolve into a moral. I wanted to find out if we could be better as a race. And I didn't know how to find that out in the world. So for me, writing's always been that kind of way of figuring things out. So you take this character and put it into this situation and see what happens. And to some extent, I mean, there are writers who plan everything out. I guess you've figured out by now I'm not that kind of writer. And I'm the writer who enters into that world and takes the question with me and sees what I find there. And there are things that I know, of course. I always knew how the book was going to end. And it's really nerve-wracking to know that now this is like I was saying to a few people who I just signed books for. It's like waiting for the other shoe to drop, because now you send the book out and people buy it and they take it away and you think, okay, now what happens? You know, what happens next? And do they like it? Do they? Because how I ended it, and you can only end it the way you ended it. A few weeks ago in Perth, I was speaking and someone stood up at the end really aggressively and put their hand up after the questions were over, and I said, one more question. And she said, how can you possibly fulfill all my desires? And I said, honey, I can't. And no one in life is going to be able to do that. However, I wrote that first book that you liked and all those other ones by fulfilling my desires. And I hope that we can align for this final book. And I guess that's all you can do as a writer. You can't, at one point, maybe midway through the year, I got really suddenly nervous because I suddenly got this feeling that there were, after the announcement went out and I got a huge reaction from people, I suddenly got scared of what expectations were being suddenly put on a book that I didn't know how I could possibly fulfill. And that girl in a funny way voiced all that feeling I had. And my editor said this great thing. She said, I think one of the things that they liked about the series and what she likes about it, she said, is they just like being in that world. And it's just such a calm and simple and comfortable thing. And I thought, oh yeah, because that's what I like too. That's why I built it so I could be in it. So maybe it doesn't have to be so much on, am I going to be able to act? People posted things on my Facebook page like, there are some deal breakers here. You have to answer these questions. And I didn't answer all of the questions because Elspeth doesn't see everything. Because in the end, she's just one person. And while she is a device to some extent, she's also a person. And I can't betray her personhood by making her the person who can answer every single question like an oracle. She has to be blind in some things in the end. She has to not know everything. There are secrets I have about the book that you might guess. And they're in there. Because I saw over the years different times people guess things, but there's no way they could guess those things. They're getting some of the underneath stuff that happens when you write a book too. So I have faith that the questions are there. And someone also posted recently, she better answer this question. I have to know the answer to this question. And a guy came on and said to her, actually, I don't need her to answer that question, or maybe many questions, because I love the years I've spent guessing what happens. So there's still gaps, and I think good writing, for me as a reader, good writing allows you to have gaps in which to use your own imagination. And great works, like really great works like Ulysses, has such great gaps in it that it's really, really hard to figure out what the hell that guy was trying to say altogether. But in a way, that's what makes it great. The writing is so great and so strange and so weirdly beautiful that it draws you in and leaves you there, and you have to invent your own end somehow. I'm not writing Ulysses, so those gaps don't exist in my writing. But there are gaps. There are areas where I felt there was one moment when I came to the book, and I won't say anything that's going to be a spoiler because I really hate spoilers. But I can say to you that there's one gap where there are gaps where I thought I was going to answer a question. I thought I was going to tell you something, and then I got to the moment and thought, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. And because sometimes I thought, maybe it doesn't need to be said because it's so obvious from what I've written. Maybe I don't need to have it said. I had my editor write at one point to me, Isobelle, can't we see this? Can't we see what happens? And I wrote back and said, well, but she isn't there. She can't see this. She can only have it reported to her. She can't be everywhere, and she can't do everything. really important things happening to her, and it's important that she's not always in control of everything. She thinks she's going to be, but as you know from reading the series, there are many times when she thinks she's far from her quest and discovers she's in the middle of it. So these moments happen for her too, and there's moments when she's proceeded on false assumptions, because that's what we do in life. Some people can spend their whole life building thoughts and ethics and feelings around a wrong assumption about something wrong, and there might be some incredible paradigm shift when they suddenly realise how things really are. So for her, these moments have to happen too. And for me, like I hope for you when you read them, for me there were those, oh my God, that's what's going to happen. I felt that writing it. So
That would have been interesting.
yeah, it is. It is interesting, and it's a very chaotic way to write. I used to, for years when I was being asked to do, it's because he heard Mum's voice, or she heard Mum's voice. There were times when I as a writer, I felt like I should be more in control, and that I could never let anybody know how out of control the process was. And I was always being asked to do these mentorships or these master classes, and I hate giving master classes because I always feel like they come and they want to master. And I don't feel like a master, because each book is a new journey and a new challenge. You can master writing to some extent, but you're always learning. But each book, you can't master that book until you begin it, and mastering it means getting to the end of it and knowing how to do it, and each book has its own challenge. So I always felt when I stood up in front of these master classes weird, because I didn't like feeling they expected me to utter kind of master-like utterances. I didn't feel that certain about anything. And then one day, maybe a year ago, I was standing up in front of a master class actually in Sydney, and I just thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I said, you know what, let me tell you how it is for me. Like someone said, I want you to tell me how to organise my writing. I want you to tell me how to plan properly. And I said, you know what, I can't tell you that. And let me tell you how I work and why I can't. And what I was basically saying to them is, it's a very organic process. I don't plan it because to some extent I want to make the journey myself, the sort of journey we make as a reader when we read a book. And that discovery process, and that, because if you plan it, and you set it all up in advance, you know you're going to go from here to there and from here to there. So there's kind of no surprises. It's all very much structured and worked out. Some people do it brilliantly. But for me as a writer, I feel that kind of headlong movement into the dark. You know where some things are, you know some things that are going to happen. But you don't know a lot of things. And so anything can happen to you when you're writing. And there's a greater sense of excitement in writing like that. So I admitted this to this masterclass, and after I'd finished it, I never had a better reaction to a masterclass than on that day. And people tweeted like I was God for weeks, weeks afterwards. And I think that was really because I hadn't just admitted it. I'd said how many people work as writers, and everybody seemed, I realised then, to have this feeling that you're supposed to be organised when you write. You're supposed to plan everything out. And I don't think you are supposed to. Some people work well that way, and that's their way. But I think maybe for more of us, it's a matter of, working on a number of levels. You work consciously, and I think of it as being, I'm on a mountaintop, and I can see way there in the distance another mountaintop, and that's the end. And I can see what's going to happen, but it's a long way away, so I can't see the detail. But I can see what's going to happen. Down in the valley, which is full of mist, things poke up a tree or a church steeple or a castle or something, and I know those things are going to happen, but there's mist there, so I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what I'll meet beneath that mist, and to me, that's that journey down into a book. And in a way, the only difference between this and reading is that as a writer, I don't know what the end is. As a reader, I don't know what the end is, but as a writer, I do. And I think you do have to have a very strong feeling of ending, not so much actually physically what's going to happen, but you have to have an emotional feeling. And for me, writing's like orchestrating emotions, which sounds really funny when I've just said out loud what I really believe, that I'm very rational, I work on a very rational level, but in fact I suspect writing is completely irrational with me, and a lot of it proceeds underneath the level of conscious thinking. And so that it's, maybe I can give you an example. Years ago I stayed in France. This sounds like name dropping, but these great things happen to writers also. You can stay in the key missing studio in Paris. And I was staying there, and a lot of governments have apartments in this place where various artists stay. And there was this old and rather lecherous Israeli artist of about 1 million years old. He seemed to me at the time, he was like 78 or something, but he was always trying to ask me out. And he was this kind of Romeo, and I was like 22 or 3 or something, or I don't know, young. But he was this incredible painter. He used to paint these giant pieces of what was like butcher paper, but really big bits pasted on an entire wall. And he would paint these incredible landscapes, and then on top of them, he had his son died in a bomb blast in the bomb of the Israeli embassy years and years and years ago, and his wife went mad. And so he used to paint these paintings that were exquisite, and then over top of them he used to shave black lead, or he'd burn paper, and then he used to paste these kind of like, draw these kind of like black, it looked like disease paper, and that's what he covered it with. And it was really creepy, beautiful and strange and weird, but that's his view of the world. And he said to me, Isobelle, don't write about Paris. And I was prompting him to write about Paris, and I said, why not? And he said, because then it would just be name dropping. And I said, well, when am I allowed to write about Paris? And he said, you must wait until Paris goes into you. And when it comes out again, it's not just Paris, it's Isabelle's Paris. It was very seductive in his own kind of way. And he was 70-something. But it was that made it. And I didn't write for about 10 years about Paris. And he was right. You know, as a writer, we have to wait until ideas go down deep into us. And I think one of the big problems with the writing world the way it is now is this constant feeling you've got to hurry up and produce. And if you're successful, to produce faster. And I remember when I was young, being told by the publishers, Isobelle, you've got to get this book out, or people will stop reading you. They'll stop reading the series. I'm material proof that is not the case. On this day, I can say that really decisively, because I never expected it to be like this on this day. But nevertheless, it just says that if, you know, as I was saying to you before, that you have to have allegiance to your own piece of writing when you write, and to the thing that you set on it on, and to the characters that you create. Those of us who write, they have to be what matters. And the best thing that you ever produce will be produced from this completely selfish immersion in what you do. Because if you're thinking about audiences, and you're thinking about, you know, who to publish and who to do this with, if you're thinking about all of those things, it's an external journey. It's not to do with that deeply intimate, beautiful act which is writing. And the only thing that comes close to it is reading a great book that you love. Somebody posted some husband posted on the internet last night, I'm not going to see my wife for at least 3 days now. And I just thought it was and I said to him, and I said, eyes are open again. And I said, to him, then you're a lucky man, because a woman who can fall into a book is a true romantic. So, and I think that's true. I think that there's some special quality about those of us who are true readers, and we can fall into a book. The world should be full of us. Unfortunately, it's not. You know, if you look at, I don't know what the statistics are in Australia, but I just saw it the other night on the internet, that in America, but I'm sure it's equatable, in America, 80% of families don't buy books. 80%. That means that huge audience, millions of people, are made up of the 20%. And it's the same with us. We who are sitting here are not the greater percentage, but we are the smartest, most romantic, most beautiful percentage. And if the world was full of people like us, we would have no problems at all. And that's because we're readers, because the act of reading requires you to empathise, to think, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and to be able to fall in and to surrender to a book in a way that maybe other people can't do. I mean, it maybe those people who don't read books are like people who can move their elbow backwards, and people who can't. You know, I can't move my elbow beyond this moment, beyond this space, but maybe, you know, maybe those people who can't read can't even move their elbow at all. You know, maybe there's really something different about us. Sometimes I wonder about that. Maybe we're the empaths and the fast seekers. Maybe we really are those people, even if it doesn't look like it.
That makes me happy.
Somebody wrote the other day, or someone asked me, a journalist asked me the other day, you can have any power. Out of all those powers, which one would you want most? And I would wish for to be able to speak to animals. Of course, I'd But if I could give a power to the world, the power that I would like to give might be the power for people to have to empathise. So whatever you did, you would get back what you gave out. That means those people who are kind and good and compassionate would get that back, and the people who are the opposite would get what they deserve. Unfortunately, that doesn't appear to be the world that we live in. But I think I post a lot when I post on my Facebook page things which I find beautiful. Like I saw that the city of Hamburg are striving to be a carless city by a certain date, which to me is absolutely beautiful. I would like to live in a city like that. And in Iceland, for instance, suddenly they're trying. One city, I think, is it in Iceland, or maybe it's Norway. One city is trying to give every single person who lives in that city a basic wage. So imagine every housewife whose job is denigrated because she doesn't happen to earn money suddenly gets a wage. Everybody gets a basic wage. Wouldn't that be lovely? And I often think that stuff that funnels towards me and that I hope to funnel back out into the world is a kind of another level of what I'm doing now, once the books are published. But the act of writing in the end, it still is, that inward kind of drive. I'm already starting to get a lot of questions about Darkfall and the final book. And it's really funny. My publicist said to me the other day, the journalist who interviewed wants to know when the first book in the Before Time Chronicles is coming out. And I just said back, ha ha ha. And then I said, in case, because it's written, you can't see how demented that was, I wrote demented cackling. I wanted to know that that is not something I'm going to answer at this moment. I would like to try to avoid getting myself in the situation that I was in this book ever again. In the sense, it's lovely that people want you, but sometimes the press to get out brings it out faster than you would want it to be out. But then on the other hand, that said, there was a heroic quality to that trying to get to the end, which now looks, I liked it. There was some part of me that relished it. And so, somebody said to me the other day, and I hope this is true, I like to believe it's true, said to me that when we're under pressure, sometimes we think better, we make better decisions. And I thought, well, actually, that's a good thing. If maybe it wasn't a bad thing, you're only going to be able to tell me that once you've read the books and say, you shouldn't have rushed the end, you didn't get it right at the end. And people are posting things like, about the Destroyer, people are posting things like, it's definitely this character. I always hated him, and I'm thinking, oh, well, not going to like what happens there. And people post to me, oh, I love this character, I hope something really good happens to them, and I think, so I know I am definitely going to make some people unhappy or sad or whatever. But I think you can, even most of you, I think you can, if you read a book, I think you can feel emotionally what kind of book it is. Like I used to get, I got an email maybe a few years back, and it's sort of stuck in my mind. She wrote, because you have to finish something, because we don't know what kind of ender you are. Are you going to kill everybody at the end? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do this?
It's like George R.
Yeah.
Martin.
Are you going to? Yeah, somebody posted. She better not do a George R.
Sorry, it's Red Queen, not Red Wedding.
Very good.
On that note, does anyone have questions?
Yeah,
Obviously,
that's a good
spoilers.
Yeah, let's have questions. Just no spoilers. We can do that afterwards. And if you want to ask me or anything, I'm very happy to have that conversation with you, but as a private message. So if you can't wait and you want to talk about something, or you want to say, why did you do this? Come to me with a private message and do what you like. Because I'm going to enjoy that conversation.
I was wondering, so you said you knew how you were going to end it. I was wondering how much of the ending that you knew about. So did you know the last plot point, the last sentence, the last paragraph, like the last scene?
I did think that I knew what the last sentence would be.
Yeah.
And it didn't end exactly, it didn't end exactly as I wanted, because this is how desperately tight the deadline was. In order to get the book to meet this deadline today, I had to finish by a certain time, and I was tweeting changes. I'm not tweeting, I was texting changes at the last 5 minutes to my editor wrote to me, Isobelle, you've got 5 minutes. No more changes after 5 minutes. And I'm saying, I just want to change the one last sentence. Because I like the sound, the music of the last sentence, I wanted it to be poetically right. And at the same time while I'm trying, my daughter suddenly texts me, Mama, I'm lost, I've missed the bus, what bus should I catch? And I thought, so I chose the book. First time in my entire life when I doted on my daughter from the minute she was born, I chose the book. As I sent it to her, my daughter texted to me, "It's okay, Mum, I found it." And I thought, yes! At 17, for the first time in my life, I made the right choice. Maybe it's time to let go a little.
Sorry, it's your baby too.
I know. And so I'm so relieved that I did make that. So I changed it slightly because I just wanted a certain flow. I had an idea in the middle of the night, and I was so tired I overslept, and I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I've almost got no time, I have to make that change. So I did make some very last minute changes. I had some thoughts at the last minute, and every time I rewrote the book, I had new revelations about what meant. I feel if I'd had another 6 months, I'd have thought of things that I hadn't thought of. I did think of one thing at the very end, which I suddenly realised about a character. I had right at the end, and I thought, oh my God, that's why. But then I decided I can't say it because there's no time left to write it properly. So, but there are back doors in for me because there's no way I could. I don't know if I would ever have been capable of finishing this series. There was an end. You know, I wasn't writing a picaresque adventure where this happened and then that's happened. I wasn't writing. I did have sort of like an overall view right from the start. But as I got older, I realised there were whole levels of things I hadn't even thought of when I was 14. And that's why the books grew and all the storylines grew. Adult thoughts came to me which fitted into the adult characters, and that grew too. But there were things that changed, but no load-bearing beings in the story ever changed. Things like what happened to Dominic, which is in the past now. What happened to Dominic, I didn't expect that. He started to behave strangely, and I went with it. I went to see what that would mean. And he turned out to be a really important character right to the end of the book, right to the end of all the books. So you'll find his story unwinds to some extent in what's to come as well. But
If you do have a favourite, what would it be out of not just the Obernewtyn Chronicles, but anything that you've ever written?
Well, out of the Obernewtyn Chronicles, my favourite, this one, of course, it's like your latest boyfriend. You're always in love with the one that you worked on, so that is my love of the moment. I loved Aisling because it was where I really figured out what they were, the heart, they're the heart, that's the heart of the series. And it's interesting that you nod because it happens in every audience I speak to, that's often the favourite. A lot of people like the Keeping Place because they liked being at Obernewtyn for a long time, and a lot of the books are away from Obernewtyn, so that was one of the things. But in the end, it was the Aisling was the book that people liked most too, which was great because it's the one I felt that about too. Out of all of the books, the most fun I ever had writing a book was Billy Thunder and the Night Gate. I had the best. That's the next thing that I'm going to be working on. I want to finish that series because it's smaller. I can't cope with another gigantic book just yet, and so it's smaller and it's time. It'll also finish a series off, and I've been waiting for something to come with those series, with that series, which I finally figured out. And so now I'm ready to write that. So that's the next thing I'm going to write. And the Little Fur books, I love writing them too.
Which character surprised you most?
Which character surprised me most?
Oh, I've stumped you there.
I think it's you think about what does it mean surprised. I mean, the thing about the characters is I know them better than anything. So in a way they surprise me the least. What unfolds around me. Often other characters have surprised me. Like for instance, Dominic was a great surprise to me. I didn't know that would happen. I didn't know that would happen. I would say Dragon was a huge surprise. I knew she was an important character when she appeared. I just wasn't quite sure why and what she connected to. And so yeah, she was Merriman. He surprises me because I never know what he's going to do. And when I figured out something halfway through the series, which may not be really that clear to anybody ever, although it's said outright in this series, he was the one who surprised me. That I didn't expect, but I can't tell you about that either yet. It's connected to other things. Yeah.
Do you consider the series closed, or are you open to later on finishing it off with whatever may be left behind? Besides what you don't want to specify.
Yeah. Well, it's like the other books. There are aspects of her story which I would like to tell, which I can't tell because they haven't unfolded yet. That would require require months of her life beyond the end of the book, where I'd love to unfold final stages. So I've tried to give hints to them, but I would love to unfold some of that. And I can't, I'll never go back, I'll never see the world through Elspeth's eyes again, that I know. I won't ever write about the world through her eyes again, not in a short story, not in anything, because her story's over from her point of view. And that's the hard thing for me, to know that that chapter for me is truly closed. But that said, I will be writing a prequel series called Chronicles, which is the story of Cassandra. And Cassandra and Hannah, and it's told through the eyes of Cassandra very decisively. Hannah appears as a very important character. I love her, but I won't write that story through her eyes. But I will write short stories for some time through Hannah's eyes, because there are aspects of the story that she can tell and that I can unfold through her eyes, which I really look forward to doing. But Cassandra's story will tell, and Hannah sees the future. She sees Elspeth's time, and she sees Elspeth. So I can see the world of Elspeth through her eyes. So there are aspects of the story that I can get unfold. And I also I don't know if I'll do it. Mostly I know I'm going to write a book, or I know I never will go back to that again. Alice on White Star is one of the books where I always thought that I would like to, I have a great idea for a standalone separate book connected to that book, which I'd love to do. And with these series, I'd love to write Dragon and Matthew's story, because he's out of the picture for so long, and the Red Land and stuff, that's all so interesting, and I would love to get into that more and deal with that more, and about what happened with it in that story. So so those are the things yet to come.
Sorry again. Are you ever going to go back and revisit Scatterloo?
I might write a short story about what happens to William, but probably not as a book. No, I don't think so. As a book, that one.
And this is more like a writing or plot idea. I just wondered, like, when you're writing, do you ever find like you got this idea of a plot, of this very idea of a character, and then as you're writing, they suddenly start changing on you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that happened with Dominic. They just start going in a direction you don't expect. And for me, that's like I was talking about before, that old Israeli guy. He was really talking about how it's in your subconscious. And when you write really deeply, it's the problem with first draft writing. When you write a first draft, you've got all your conscious ideas there. You haven't even begun to tease up what you also might have in your subconscious. And editing, you can never think of editing as just tidying up, because editing is an essential part of writing. And what happens with editing is that you start to go down. You think, why is that character doing that? And you rewrite it, and you have him talk to another character, and the story develops and grows, and you begin to see there's more there, and you start to be able to tease it up and find out what it is. And so I think that teasing up of character happens as you redraft and go through it over and over again. And if you're the kind of writer who perfects as you write and plans and writes perfectly everything as you go, I think it's much harder actually to access those lower levels, or maybe they do it in a different way. But for me, that going back and forwards as you correct and you go over and you change, or if you're lucky enough to have a series that spans a long period of time, therefore you have great long periods of thinking time, well then you can tease up a lot that comes out too. I find showering very fruitful. I mean, not just in the, to aid cleanliness and hygiene, but also because when you stand in the shower, you stand there and you think about things. You can't do anything else in the shower. And you're just standing there thinking. I have a lot of revelations in the shower. So I have a notebook in the bathroom. A soggy notebook.
Why is the water bill so high?
Any other questions?
How do you keep track of the plot threads and what the characters are up to and where they're at? Do you have to keep rereading?
I
all
do
of the books?
reread, and that's another of those aids to drawing out, because I often find in an audience a person will say to me, oh, I see you did this, and you think, oh, and yeah, exactly, because at the time you weren't aware of it, but it's there, visible, just not visible to you. And so often when I reread, in order to just get, it's not really to find out what happened, it's to get a flow through, or to get the mood of the story, the feel and the trajectory that you come off the last book in. So I've had a lot of thoughts in the meantime that I know what I want to do, and they're those things poking up out of the mist that I know I'm now going to do. and then you reread through the books and you come through them at speed, and it's hard because your mind often stops you from actually being able to read. So I often find I skate over the top a bit. I think, no, I have to go back and read it so that I can read it. And often I'll think, oh, look at that. Wow, I can make this happen with this. So the tiny details of what you pick up on those read-throughs. How do I keep it all in my mind though? It's like if I introduced each of you in this moment, just individually, to all the people in your life right now and gave you a list of characters, you'd say, oh my God, I can't possibly know that many people. But you do. And you know all the webs of connections that connect them, and you have histories connected to them. No one could write a book as complex as your life, and all of that is contained in your mind. And it may not be at the front of your mind, but if you meet a person you know, the history immediately is there. And because I've been living this story for all of my life, that's what it's like for me too. It's alive and it jumps to the, into play at the moment. So between those two things, it's really easy to keep it in my mind. What's going to be hard is to let it go now,
Who did you read when you had a chance to read books?
I read, I'm a voracious reader. I always have a chance to read. The most recent book I've read is James Bradley's Clay, which I thought was really beautifully written. Quite short. Apocalyptic stories are usually very big. Ecological stories are usually really big like mine. But it's quite slim and it's written with all that lovely precision of short story. So that's a really nice book. And I read Isobelle Carmody all the time. I absolutely love her books. I love her writing. I like her essays. Even her essays about writing are beautiful and poetic to read and sharp. And I read Sherry Tepper. I just saw she got a World Fantasy Award, Lifetime Achievement Award. Books like Beauty. I read those books to save my life. The way sometimes people write that my books incredibly saved them. If this 13-year-old girl, 14-year-old girl that I once was could be sitting here now, she would never ever be able to imagine that she would be one of you. She would be sitting there, and she never met an author in her life. She borrowed books from the library in those days. We didn't meet authors, so she didn't meet anybody. And it was only, when I was in my 20s that I actually thought about publication for her and sending it out. So I had a lot of that journey completely unpainted, and I was lucky, because those of you who are writing now, it is hard to separate from the world in which you can go out and tweet a book out there tomorrow if you want to, put it out there in the ether, and it's there, and you don't have all the waiting and the time that I think in some ways builds the quality of a book. So if you are going to do that with your own books, I think you really have to, go make sure that you keep the quality of your book up. Make sure you never let it go until it's the best you can possibly make it. Which isn't to say it has to be perfect. How can any of us be, perfect? But it should be the best you can make it, and you don't let it go until then. And you never think about what will sell. Otherwise, you'd have yet another of the 7,000 vampire novels out there. And probably among those 7,000 vampire novels, there's 2 brilliant novels. But will they ever be found amidst all that stuff that's created because somebody thought, oh, this would be a good idea? Same with series. Publishers say way too often to good young authors now, oh, that's a great idea. Do you think you could make it a series? No, let them write another book and publish that. Don't be constantly imagining that you can market it up. Let the writers write and don't mess with them because they know what they're doing, or at least they'll figure it out if you give them time enough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think we're about hit time. Thank you so very much. I know as a fan, we're all incredibly excited to have got to meet you and hear you. This is a little present from the Bookshoppers. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
And I think we've got a few minutes more if anyone didn't have the chance to get his books.
Yeah, I'll go sit back there where I've got my pen, but I wanted to say, I really meant it when I said you're my first audience. I'm going to stop saying it really pretty soon, but I'd love to hear what you thought of the book at 5 minutes. Okay?